Welcome back. Welcome to another episode of Cap and Trade. I am your host, Texans Cap. Glad to be back. Glad to be back live. It's been a little bit. I know we haven't had as much time for these videos, but we are here and it has been a crazy week. Just a lot to get to tonight. But one thing I do want to throw down is make sure you're subscribed to the newsletter, capandtrade.football, if you haven't already. It's a newsletter that I put out about once a week. It's free. It covers NFL, Texans, free agency, salary cap, roster building, kind of a plethora of things. So it's something that I work really hard with and appreciate it if you subscribe to that. So with that, what we're going to look at tonight is just some thoughts on free agency. Wanted to talk about the Malik Collins situation, Joe Mixon and how that whole situation played out with the trade and then the extension. Talk about the draft pick trade that we had today, and just any questions or comments that y'all have. It's great to be back. Glad to see everybody here. I see a lot of names that I recognize on the chat board, so it's good to see y'all. Let's see here if I can remember. There we are. Sam, what's up, buddy? Good to see you. So, Scott, appreciate it, man. Yeah, it's been a whirlwind of free agency, and this was a pretty jam-packed free agency compared to the last couple of years, not only for the Texans, but just for the league. Finally started to see more marquee players hit the market. Saw a lot of different market shift dynamics. We saw the safety market just get flooded with veteran talent right at the start of the league year. And then we saw the spike in the running back market. That's a reflection of the draft class coming up. And then you're just seeing some really interesting trades. Houston was involved in a lot. And then it was a very, very interactive, very, very busy free agency. And I know a lot of y'all know I do help over at overthecap.com with a lot of contract data, and man, I think we got 85 contracts just overnight. So I think we probably got over 250 contracts that Jason and I have entered over the past probably 72 hours. And my goodness, it's just my hands are feeling it. That's a lot of typing. So, It's very good to be back going. Free agency is always the start of the NFL league year, start of the offseason. And so a lot to get into, but, specifically on free agency and the Texans, it was kind of I posted a fun graph in jest, like up, down, but the fan excitement level was very subdued on Monday, the 11th, when the legal tampering period opened. Not much happened. And then day 2 was when the Danielle Hunter Danielle Hunter deal came down, and we started seeing more contracts signed, and then the excitement level just skyrocketed back up, and it was great to see that. And and then today, it's kind of a mixed bag. It seems like with the draft pick, the trade with the picks, kind of some people were for it, some people were against it. We'll kind of get into that a little bit. Let's see here. There's some other people jumped in. Jerry, good to see you, buddy. Joey, I see your question. We'll get to that in a little bit. Hey, German's good to see you, buddy. Thank you. Patrick Storm's in the house. Larry Payton's here. Ryan, you know better. That's right there. I just haven't opened it yet. So, no, my Coke Zero is here, man. Don't worry. Still waiting on that sponsor money to come in, but I'm here. So... but overall, I mean, the team is plugging holes. They created a new hole at defensive tackles, kind of going to be some rotational pieces there. Maybe they make another move at the defensive tackle spot, but, solidifying the edges with Danielle Hunter, Danico Autry. Danico kind of fulfills that Jerry Hughes role, kind of be the rotational player. He has some ability to shift inside if needed, but primarily he should stay on the edge. So it's really good to see that trio for the outside edge spots. I am excited for Khalil Davis. I know it's kind of an unheralded name outside of Houston, Not too many people are familiar with him, but I think he's a name that would be kind of interesting. So I see we do have our first super chat. I had just added these in, so super chats will go straight to the top. So Arthur Wilson's first up, and let me move this over. There we go. So I appreciate Arthur a lot. He interacts quite a bit with the Substack, with the newsletter. He hits the chat over there if you ever have any questions. So, what player do you think we signed or re-signed that had the best value for what we paid for them? I think that's probably going to be a cross between Aziz Al-Shahir at linebacker. I think he's going to play a very pivotal role in this defense. I think I say that because of the defensive tackle rotation. That may be kind of the weakness of this defense. So I think him and Christian Harris are going to be called on a lot to really hold that lane integrity, those running lanes on the inside. And he's going to have to take over what Blake Cashman was doing for this team. And so, that's to me is probably my favorite signing, especially for the value. Like I was talking about with Khalil Davis coming back, I'm really excited to see what he can bring to the table. If he can continue that ascending performance that we saw towards the back half of last year. So that was another player I'm glad to see back. And then it's a big contract, but Danielle Hunter, I like the structure. It's a 2-year deal, fully guaranteed more or less, 48 out of $49 million, but there's 2 void years to spread out some money. But I think that's a market value deal. So overall, I'm really happy with that one as well. But, that's kind of would be my take on it. So I appreciate the support, man. It looks like Joey's got a super chat in here as well. Welcome back, bro. Your streams have been missed. Oh, man, I appreciate it, buddy. Yeah, I'm glad to be back. Hopefully I can continue to kind of keep doing these things, but, life gets in the way sometimes. So, but Travis says late. No, I was right on time, Travis. Right exactly on time. I mean, literally, my timer went off on my software and I hit the live button, so I was right on it. So, free agency, I really like like we were talking about, I really like the edges. I really like what Danielle Hunter brings to the table. I think he is probably a little bit of a plus over John Gennard. Apparently the team didn't sound like they made any kind of offer towards him, which doesn't surprise me. It's kind of what I'd heard that that was pretty much going to happen, that they were just ready to move on. And they probably had some different options. They were looking at Christian Wilkins at defensive tackle and then Danielle Hunter, which everybody knew was going to be a free agent. His contract was void, and so that wasn't a surprise. So everybody had his eye on him. But, so they had a couple different paths to go on the defensive line front. But that edge is just going to create, man, between the 3 of those players, that's going to be a fantastic, fantastic rotation. I'm really excited about that. Like we were talking about at linebacker, Aziz Al-Shahir, I'm really excited about him. I think him paired up with Christian Harris is going to be a very formidable duo at linebacker. Very excited to see what they bring. He obviously has a lot of history with D'Amico Ryans. From his time in San Francisco. They tried to sign him last year for 2023, but he, obviously took the deal up in Tennessee, and he played 1 year up there. So it's good that they were able to get him in, and hopefully he can just kind of build on what he's been doing the last 3 or 4 years and become, maybe that Fred Warner-esque type top player that just can command the defense and really, really build up this front 7. So it's going to be, despite the issues at defensive tackle, I think it's going to be a pretty formidable front 7. And then, they really, spent a lot of money on the defense. So, Jeff Okudah, that's one that it's like another take on Steven Nelson, right? Steven Nelson obviously didn't have the health issues that Jeff Okudah's had, but I mean, he's a number 3 overall draft pick from, moons ago, 4 or 5 years ago. and just has not been able to stay healthy whatsoever when it comes to his career. And, it's, if they can get, like you've been hearing on the radio, the pixie dust from D'Amico, if they can get some of that life back from Jeff Okudah, and, he's playing on a 1-year deal, so he's got a lot to play for, but there's really just not a whole lot of depth behind Jeff Okudah and Derek Stingley. And that's going to be something that hopefully is addressed during the draft. Maybe they find another cornerback in free agency, but that group is pretty thin. Maybe they can swing a trade for a veteran with one of the 2 7ths or the 6th round pick that they have at their disposal. So just a lot to I'm sorry, I get distracted easily. So it makes my beard look immaculate. Thank you, Pat. So I'm sorry, we're going to change real quick. I'll get back to free agency. So I did swap cameras. I'm a tech geek. But I had a Panasonic G7 mirrorless camera that was my webcam for years, or on here in the last couple of years. And then I swapped to my iPhone. I have my iPhone as my webcam because I have a Mac computer at home, so it's a very easy integration. And man, it's easy. Just put it up on the mount. I don't even need to plug it in. It works wirelessly, so it's good. So that's where that's coming from. So that, overall on the defense side, I think just Jeff Okudah is going to be a player they're going to have to keep an eye on. So hopefully he can stay healthy, but they need to have another contingency plan behind him. And then moving back to the defensive tackle. So we were talking about with Malik Collins. So the initial reports were that it was going to be a player for player trade, right? With Eric Armstead and Malik Collins. Why that fell through, there's a lot of speculation out there. We don't know if Houston and Armstead couldn't come together on a contract as part of the trade, or if something happened, maybe they had other parameters in addition to the player for player trade, and that fell through. Who knows? I mean, we can speculate to the end of the earth on that. That I've heard, that there's real no reason why. And I'm sure maybe something will come out later down the road, but today it's not quite available. So Houston ends up sending Collins to San Francisco for a 7th rounder. And that seemed a little low. I'm not saying that he should go for like a 4th or 3rd round pick, but I thought you would just get a little bit more than a 7th. Now, he did have $6 million guaranteed on his salary this year, which is probably going to drive down the value even more. So maybe that's a clear reason why. Potentially you would think that they shopped him around, across the league, and just maybe nobody was interested, at that price point. And San Francisco was. And so they end up just trading him. And it's a weird series of events, right? You lose Sheldon Rankins over what sounded like about a $2 million difference. He goes to Cincinnati after Houston worked really hard to try to bring him back. Then you deal Malik Collins for, basically change, 7th rounder. You don't get the deal done with Eric Armstead, and I'm fine with him. I'm fine with Houston not signing that contract, the 3-year, $51 million deal. I'm fine with that. But it's just the whole way it played out. It almost felt like, I don't know if Rankins was the play in addition to Armstead to really bolster that front end, or if it was plan A was Malik Collins for Armstead, plan B was Rankins, and then he missed out on that. Plan C was to get Armstead as a free agent, missed out on that, and it just went down the bucket real quick. And now all of a sudden, you're short at the defensive tackle spot. So the team's going to have to do some work there. There's really not much out there in the open market anymore. We saw that they signed Tim Settle out of Buffalo, but he's 2 years removed from having any good career work, so hopefully they can rejuvenate him. But it's going to be just a serious rotation in there between Settle, Khalil Davis, Foley, Fatuski, and Kurt Hinish. So really not much of a name of names inside there, but hopefully the team can kind of work it out. And it was just a weird series of events. I mean, let's just be honest with it. And it didn't play out the way probably Houston wanted it to play out, but they've got plenty of ways to address it. Hopefully with the draft, and we'll talk about those draft picks here in a little bit later. So yeah, and if you got any questions, comments, throw them up on the board. I've got. I asked if you can just put a Q in front of your question, and as we get towards the end, I can search by Q, and and then I can kind of go through those questions. It looks like the super chats are working, so those go to the front of the line. If you do have super chat, post it up, and then we'll get to that right away, no matter what we're talking about. So the next piece is Joe Mixon. All right, first off, let me preface this. Everybody knows I don't like paying running backs. I don't. It's just always been my nature. And we saw the spike in the running back market. Houston went after Saquon Barkley, missed out on that. And then they, you see just running backs just, DeAndre Swift went for, what, $8 million a year. Josh Jacobs went to Green Bay for almost $11.5 million a year, something like that. Saquon, 13 plus. So Houston obviously just wasn't prepared to go at those levels. Like I said on X, on Twitter, I still call it Twitter, good teams stay within their guardrails. Teams that go above and beyond their guardrails, you turn into the New York Giants, you turn into the Jacksonville Jaguars, to where you're overspending left and right. And then you have aging veterans on your roster that cost way too much money. And then you're just going through that vicious cycle every 2 years of unloading the roster, spending a bunch of money to backload it, unloading the roster, spending a bunch of money. And it's just not where you want to be. And good teams, they know their market valuations, and they're not going to go past them. It's simple as that. And so, missed out on all these different running backs. Then the news came down that Joe Mixon was going to be released by Cincinnati. And so, obviously, the fans, were interested in going after Joe Mixon when he gets released. Cincinnati, like a lot of teams do, they'll leak that stuff out after the transaction window closes for the day, which is 3 p.m. local for us. Leak it out at like 5:30. Hey, we're going to release this guy tomorrow, just to let the rest of the league know that if you want to trade something, we can work out a trade. So Houston's able to send the 242nd pick, I believe, over to Cincinnati for Mixon. Bring him over. He's got 1 year left on his deal, $5.75 million. Perfect. I'm happy with that. Very, very happy with that. Mixon's got a lot of juice left in the tread. He's a 3-down back. Very good receiving back. Appears to be a good blocker. He was a captain on Cincinnati's roster for 2 or 3 years in a row. So, by all accounts, seems a good person in the locker room. We're not really going to talk about the past, but yeah, Scott, I see your super chat. We'll hop on. We'll get back to Joe Mixon here. So Scott Davis, let's see here. Renegotiating the Mason deal makes me think they are still buyers in the free agency. I think we don't know where they stand on their cap space just yet, because I'm still waiting on deals from I'm still waiting on deals to come back in on, I think, 5 contracts, then the Mixon extension, and then the restructure with Mason. So I'm still waiting on a lot of information to get a better idea on the cap space for the team. But going to the restructure bucket this early gives me it's 2 possible scenarios. A, they're already getting a little tight on the cap, which maybe because they got to leave money for the season and get through the draft and things like that. The draft class cost is going to be small, but maybe it is towards a move, right? And history has shown us with Nick Caserio that he never has proactively done a restructure. He's always done it on a need to be done basis, right? Like this past year, it was Jerry Hughes, Kimi Fairbairn, Steven Nelson. They were all like early regular season restructures just to make more space to get through the end of the year. And it's unusual to see him go to a restructure this early in the process. So I think I would lean more towards what you're saying, Scott, that this is just going to free up money in 2024 to allow them to bring in another player, whether it's a trade, maybe they have an eye on a safety, another player out there that they want to bring in. So that would kind of be my take on the situation. All right, so back to Joe Mixon. So I appreciate the super chats, guys. Very, very appreciative. Surprised we've got 3 of them already. So man, you are awesome. So back to Joe Mixon, like we were talking about. I love the process because you traded for the contract, right? And we were just talking about how the running back market was spiked, right? You saw all these contracts going way above what we expected market value. Like DeAndre Swift at $8 million when we were pegging it at $6.5. Saquon, everybody was saying 10, ends up at 13. Josh Jacobs, everybody was thinking 9 to 10, ends up 11.5. Houston does the smart thing. Instead of waiting and letting Joe Mixon get released and have to pay big money for a new contract that would commiserate in line with the market of what we're just seeing, he trades for it. Perfect. I love it. I love it. Then they do an extension on it. And now I don't love it. I don't understand it. I don't understand doing the extension now. Now, I get Shaq Mason last year. They traded for him, did the extension before seeing him play down. I get that. This is just a different situation to me, and I don't understand why you see the need to do the extension when he was due $5.75 million in cash this year. Now he's going to make upwards, I think, $9.5, almost $10 million this year in cash. So he gets a big pay raise. The cap number should stay about the same between the two deals. Maybe just a minor drop, but nothing huge. So I didn't really understand the need to do that. Either get into the season, if he's playing great, then you do it at a mid-season extension or something like that, or reapproach the idea next offseason. I personally don't think the running back market is going to be as great as it was this past offseason, as that we're seeing this week. So you get through the year on the current contract, and then if you want to do the new deal next offseason, do it. It's probably going to be cheaper than what you pay today. So I don't understand that. The only reason why I think that it could be is because the structure of the deal. We know Houston likes a lot of per game roster bonus money in there. This had a three and change lump sum roster bonus due on Sunday, with no per game roster bonuses, no injury protection liability in there. So maybe they just didn't like the structure. They wanted to get it more back in line with what Houston does. So they did a 3-year extension. I disagree with that part, and normally I'm fine with extensions, but that one, it just did not make sense to me, and I feel like you wait, do it mid-season, do it at the end of the season, things like that. So I don't agree with it, and that's fine. It's not my job, so I get to be here and say what I want to say. So, hopefully it plays out. I'm excited for Joe Mixon. They definitely probably need to get another running back, whether it's in the draft, which sounds like it's not a very good draft class. Maybe find another veteran out there, but, running out with Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce gives me a little concern, so we'll have to see what happens. If you got any questions, comments, throw them up on the board. I see some stuff coming through. I need to go back through. But if you got any questions, put a Q in front of your comment. That way I can search the questions, and then because I can quickly search by that instead of having to scroll up and down through the comment box to try to find questions. It's just a lot easier for me to just hit Q, hit search, and so we'll do a couple questions here just to kind of catch some of the early ones. So Tim was asking, "What's the cap at right now?" I don't know. Let me see. So missing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 contracts together, plus, so they're at 23.7. I mean, sorry, 18.78 million before those 5 contracts get added to my workbook, and then you got the restructure with Mason. We're going to assume Mixon's deal stays the same, more or less. So probably anywhere from, and none of those deals that we're waiting on are big contracts. So I think Folo's about the biggest one left that I'm waiting. He hasn't even officially signed his yet. If I had to guess, it's 18.7 right now. I think 5 and change on Mason's restructure. If it's just a basic restructure, so that's 23. We'll just call it 17 to 19 million on cap space right now, if I had to guess. And the draft class before today's trade was only like 3.37, something like that. It's a small, and now that they're out of the first round for now, it's going to be an even smaller number. It's going to be under 2 million for the draft class. Question: Sam says, what is Nick cooking up? Man, one thing that I've learned with Mr. Nick Caserio is that, excuse me, he is a wild card. I mean, a pure wild card. You just never know what that man's up to. He just does his own thing. I've been trying to figure out, like, what does he want out of a roster, and every year it's something different. And he's always aggressive, and I applaud him for that. I have no problem with that. So what he's cooking up, man, I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see at this point, because I mean, it could be another player trading for somebody. Who knows? We'll have to scour the Twitter webs to see what the players. Speaking of which, don't let the players troll you. Okay, Titus Howard, love you, but stop messing with people on Twitter. The Million Super Chat. Kiss Mary. And there's only 2 selections. Oh, and I'm going to kill Landry Locker. Simple as that. Seth, he's fine. Either one of those other ones, but I'm killing Landry quickly. That's a good one. We don't need a third option, Scott. Just kill Landry. That's fine. Yeah. So I'll put it back up. So I appreciate the super chat, Millen. It's awesome of you, man. Yeah, but kill Landry. Somebody text him and tell him I said that, so he can get mad at me. Oh, there we are. Seth Payne, Landry Locker, Patrick Storm. Oh, two Patrick in there. The Kiss Mary, that's kind of a weird. I guess marry Seth because I enjoy talking to Seth whenever I go out to training camp during the summer. I really enjoy the conversations that I have with Seth. He's very intelligent, very smart dude. And this is not a shot at anybody else there, because all the media in Houston, they're all super nice. DJ, John Alexander, Brooks Cabina was super, super cool with me. Cody Stutes is one of my best buds out there. But Seth, I just always have very, very good conversations, and he doesn't talk down to people. He doesn't act like he's smarter than you or anything like that. So I've always enjoyed just having good conversations with him, and good football conversations. And I've never didn't play the game like Seth did, so he sees things a lot better than I do. But I mean, we have very cordial, good conversations and then I'll walk away have learned something more often than not after chatting with Seth like that. So, yeah, So let's see what kind of other questions we got real quick before we jump onto the next. Before we jump onto the next talking point on the draft trade. So Joey, can we afford a Diggs trade? Can we afford a Diggs trade? Well, let's go look at his contract. Let me swap over here. Now, over the cap has been very slow because of all the traffic and from free agency. So, all right, so he is due 18 and a half. What's he due in cash? 19, 18, 19, 5, 18. Okay. So roughly $19 million a year. So we were just talking about how we have the team would probably have 17 to 18 million. You probably have to restructure somebody else on top of already Mason. So that'd be an interesting contract to take on, but man, he's 31 already. I don't like players that are past 30 at skill positions. I mean, can you afford it? Can you make it work? Yes, always. 99% of the time, if a team wants a player, they can make the cap work. In this case, you probably have to restructure somebody, then get the deal in here, and then restructure Diggs. I'm sure, but I'd have to double check. But I'm pretty sure Buffalo has automatic conversion clauses in their contracts. Most teams do. So you go in there and just do a basic restructure to lower Diggs' cap number down a little bit, and then be good to go. So can it be done? Yeah, it can be done. All right, let's see here. What's going on with Foley? If any reason he wasn't officially announced. So what I've learned over the years with this is if a player hasn't signed, it's probably because he's on vacation. This is the time of the year where players are out and about vacationing and just may not be available. There's two players so far that are unofficial: Chris Boyd and Folo. And it just could be as simple as that. I haven't heard anything that would indicate that there's a problem, that the team would not end up signing him. So I don't think it's anything like that. I think it's just the fact that maybe he's just on vacation. Maybe he's out of the country. Maybe he's somewhere not where he can get a contract sent to him where he can sign it. I would lean more towards it's probably something as simple as that. And I wouldn't worry too much about it. I texted Omar today, director of the PR, and asked him, hey, is Chris Boyd and Foley still not official? And he just replied back, yeah, not official yet. So the fact that he's just saying not official yet leads me to believe that it'll happen. Just may take a few days. Maybe they're just working out. Maybe there was some language in the contract that the agent didn't like, and they just kind of have to fine tune it a little bit. But that's why. Frazier, just to tag on to that one, why isn't it on over the cap? Because I haven't got the details yet. Just haven't got it in. The agent hasn't turned them into the PA, and we haven't seen them. Simple as that. So hopefully we will see them sooner rather than later. All right, so the next thing I wanted to talk about was the draft trade that we saw today. And, before we get into that, I really appreciate all the comments, questions. Looks like we got about 1,500 viewers on the stream, so that's got to be a new record for me. So I'm super excited for that. But make sure just want to drop one more reminder in here. Make sure you subscribe into the newsletter, capandtrade.football. It's a free newsletter. I'll get back to writing once we get past this free agency buzz. We've just been pumping out contracts left and right over thecap.com. All right, so let me change over here. So this is the trade chart. So Houston, as we saw today, traded out of the first round, traded out of pick 23 back to 42, and picked up another 6-rounder, sent their 7th-rounder, and then picked up a 2nd-rounder in 2025. Why did they do this? I have my thoughts, my theories. Talking around to some people, in the media and some smart people that look at this stuff quite a bit, kind of commiserate some of these theories. So I think they looked at the draft board, and saw that the player values that they were seeing in the late first round from 23 on to 32 were minimally compared to what the top third of the 2nd round. So pick 42 is what, the 10th pick of the 2nd round. I think that they recognize that and see, okay, there's not much difference in value at pick 23 versus 42 on what type of players that we are targeting based on our board, based on our evaluations. I understand fans can have a completely different mindset on that. You're missing out on premier talent. Well, the team probably doesn't have that same feeling on it. They're saying there's not as much value, the drop in value is very minimal. So if we move back, we can get additional firepower. And that additional firepower is the 2nd-round pick in 2025. Minnesota, lost Kirk Cousins, going with Sam Darnold this year. Kevin O'Connell's a very good coach up there. Brian Flores is a very good defensive coordinator. That's where John Grenard and Blake Cashman went. So should have a good defense up there. I'm not saying they're going to be a bottom 10 team or anything like that, but that pick, I have it up here as a mid-second. And I just did that because that was, just a safest projection. But you got to feel like that pick probably ends up in the 15 to 18 range. And that's good value. And 15th to 18th pick of that 2nd round. Now, if you've watched the show back when we used to do the weekly streams, the spaces and all that stuff, my favorite place on building an NFL roster with value is second round picks and wave 3 and wave 4 free agency. Okay. And then now this team, the Houston Texans, have 3 2nd-round picks between 2024 and 2025. You can create. Now, you've got to hit the draft pick. That's the hard part about this. You have to hit it. And the hit rate on the 2nd-round pick, not quite as high as pick 23. Now, the percentage hit rate is not a big drop between the two, whereas like a 10th down to like 40th. But the hit rate, you got to hit this draft pick to make this trade worth it. But in the event you do, 3 2nd-round picks over 2 years, you can create a lot of surplus value with that. A lot of surplus value. I don't know that it really has a whole lot to do with C.J. Stroud and Will Anderson, and potentially Tank Dell, and their contracts coming up, over the course of the next couple of years once they hit eligibility for extensions. But I wouldn't put too much stock in that. To me, I think this is just the team saying there's not a big drop-off in value from where we were at 23 down to 42. Let's get us another 2nd-round pick. We know there's a lot of potential surplus value with 2nd-round picks. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to have 3 of those over 2 years. If we hit on 2 of those, then, man, it's a big win. Big win. And you're getting those players at way, way below market value with a rookie contract, because the depreciation on a rookie contract scale drops immensely once you get past like pick 12 or 13. It just drops heavy. So 2nd-round pick, man, that's cheap. Let's see here. Oren says, super chat, appreciate it, but what else are you hearing for the next moves? I haven't heard a whole lot. I think things have about quieted down enough, but I don't think we'll see any big splash signings or anything like that. But I think the team still needs another safety. Even with, sounds like, I guess Jimmy Ward's going to stay on this roster now. I didn't know if he was going to make it or not, but the team definitely needs a safety 3. And there's still some safeties out there, especially with that glut of veteran that hit the market back on Monday when there was just seemed like every safety out there got released. You got Justin Simmons, Quandre Diggs. Didn't sound like Diggs is an option from what I'm kind of hearing around, but and then they may need to look at another cornerback, and they're obviously a defensive tackle. So haven't heard anything specific, but like we were talking about earlier, the Shaq Mason restructure might lend some credence to something coming. We'll just have to see how it plays out. But I appreciate it, man. Appreciate the super chat. Appreciate the support. So back to the trade, like we were talking about. I think this is just the team looking at variance with that 2025 second-round pick, hoping that the variance will slip their way and this pick ends up, pick 45, anywhere from 35 to 45. And then the valuation drop from 23 to 42 is just minimal in their eyes. Not saying that's right or wrong. That's just how they're viewing it. So that's kind of how I would view this trade in my eyes. Now I get the idea, and I get the fan kickback on 23 was a very good area for finding a premier defensive tackle, a premier cornerback, a premier wide receiver. But we know this wide receiver draft is very deep, so you could probably get one in the second round that still is a very good wide receiver. But 2 positions of need would be in defensive tackle and cornerback. Man, that would have been a great area to look at right there with pick 23. So, obviously the team thinks that they can find similar value with pick 42. But as we know with Nick Caserio, that's why Houston doesn't have many of their own draft picks left. He makes a lot of moves, and he very easily could jump up from 42, take this ammunition that he has, jump up from 42 back into the back end of first round, and and find his player there. So I wouldn't put that out of the realm of possibilities. That this is just him shifting around and then getting the extra second pick, then can use some of those day 3 picks to move out of 42 or their other second round pick back up into the first round, something like that. So there's just a lot of ways to look at this, and so I'd be shocked if they stayed there. So, oh, my good friend Beige, good to see you. I appreciate it. Cheers to you, man. Hope you're doing well. Good to hear from you. Yeah, and then on top of that, just one thing I want to mention. This graphic is from Joseph Hefner on Twitter. He's got a website. I think it's Jeffy's Handiwork with an I. It's a great little. He's got a lot of shiny apps on there. He's got the trade value chart. He's got a lot of. He's big and big into the data and data visuals. So check out his work, man. Super. He was happy to let me use this, I believe. So, yeah. So that's my take on the situation. Is it great? Does it? The fan base is probably a little upset. I think it's kind of split. A lot of them understand. A lot of them are fine with it. Some of them are not fine with it. It's gonna, from a fan perspective, it's gonna just not be as fun sitting there quiet on day one, just chilling out, unless Nick trades up, obviously. But the draft party may, even if they have one, may not be. It's not going to be near as exciting as it was last year, right? With the way they traded up for Will Anderson and took C.J. Stroud. So, we'll just have to wait and see. I mean, to me, it's like Nick says, trust the process, process over results. So hopefully the results follow through on this process. Yeah, so let's go back through some Q&A. So like I asked, if you can put a Q in front of your question, and then I can search it. So St. Christopher, thoughts on the lack of offensive additions? We've had the same holds as we had last year. Well, I don't think there was going to be too much additions to the offense. Joe Mixon obviously is a big upgrade. I think he's an upgrade over Singletary, so addition right there. But I think, hang on one second. Let me respond to this. Sorry, it was my wife texting me. Offensive additions, right? So Joe Mixon's a big addition. I think that, obviously an upgrade right there. The wide receiver group, I think there was a lot of speculation that maybe Robert Woods would be out as a, release. But I think that probably only happens if they had replacement. And there just really wasn't a whole lot of players at that market number that would replicate same value as replacing Robert Woods. There was a couple free agents that they could have looked at, but they felt fine where they're at. And I think obviously with the draft having a very strong wide receiver group, they can add on top of that. They definitely need to add to it because you got Tank Dell coming back from injury. You hope that he has a healthy season. Noah Brown's back. I think that's a good signing. Just need him to stay healthy. He missed a lot of games last year as well. Very inconsistent. Had two huge games, and then the rest of the year, I think he had almost 200 yards over the course of 250 yards over the course of 2 games, and then 250 yards for the rest of the year. So you need him to stay healthy. John Matthews still an unknown. Xavier Hutchinson, 6th-round pick. It's hard to expect much more out of him. So there's just really not a whole lot of depth at the wide receiver position. And then they obviously brought back Dalton Schultz, and I think that was by far the best re-addition back to the offense. So it was good to see Schultz back. So I think that's a good addition. And so I mean, it's really more or less kind of just stay the course. But I think Mixon's a big upgrade. They had so much asset allocation of the offensive line last year that there was really no need to allocate more towards it. I think Titus Howard's definitely back at right tackle. I think that whole experiment's over with. Hopefully, obviously Tunsil back, Mason's back. The offensive line's should be a good crew. Drew Scruggs, Patterson, the 2 Greens, Kendrick and Kenyon. Those 4 players battle it out for left guard and center. I have to wait and see how it plays out. I would like to see Scruggs back at center, and then one of the Greens or Patterson at left guard. So I think, and then Charlie Heck sounds like he's coming back as swing tackle. So that's why I think you just see so much addition on the defensive side. The offensive side, they brought back Schultz, brought back Noah Brown, which I think by all accounts is a good wide receiver 3, and then the addition of Mixon. So I think they're in good shape on the defensive side. So it looks like we've got another super chat here. Scott again. Madman. If they trade for a tagged player, can then be restructured to a normal deal? New abacus, yeah. No. If you trade for a player that's on the tag, you have to take the tag amount. So if they let's take Snead, right? Let's look at L'Jarius Snead. So his tag is $19.8 million this year. If they were to trade Kansas City for Snead, Snead would have to sign the franchise tag tender. That amount would get traded. So Houston would have to take on that $19.8 million onto their cap. So you'd have to make room for that. Then once it's processed on your roster, then you can negotiate a new contract. You had to get it done by July 15th. negotiate an extension, then you can get the lower cap number back down. So it's a little pain up front, but you can't do it simultaneously. You got to take the tag, add its amount, then you can do the extension to get the number back down. So I appreciate it, Scott. Appreciate the support. Patrick, Joey Smell. You spent $2 to say Joey smells. Sorry, Joey. You can throw something at Pat. Let's see what other questions we got here, man. Connor says, do you think we go after either of the Commanders' defensive tackles? I think they're probably about done with those kind of maneuvers. Now, I will say Jonathan Allen's probably the more likely target if they had to, because, Daron Payne just got signed, and Allen has 2 years left on his deal with 15 and a half and 16 and a half. So, $15, $16 million per year over 2 years. But you would like to think that it would kind of be like maybe a Brandon Cooks type of situation where maybe Washington can take on half of the salary in a sign-in bonus conversion, and then that way Houston's only responsible for $7 million. That's kind of how I would think it would have to go down. Houston has a 6th-round pick. They don't have a 5th-round pick, but maybe you can get the 6th and maybe a future pick or something like that. A future day 3 pick, something like that. You send it over to Washington. Say, hey, we'll take Jonathan Allen off your hands, but Pat's texting me. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Apologize to Joey. That's funny. Don't worry. I used a super chat one time on Landry's stream to advertise capandtrade.football just for fun, guerrilla warfare. So that would kind of, I don't know that they would have any interest in going that route, but if they were to go that route, that's kind of how I think it would have to happen. I don't know that they want to take on the full remaining contract. I think you got to try to get Washington to take on some of that money, but with Dan Quinn over there, I feel like he's going to hold on to those 2 players. Appreciate it, Connor. Crazy says, do you think we trade for a wide receiver like T? I don't. I think they're content with the wide receivers they have, and then draft another one. What's your best guess on the Mason restructure? I don't know, Larry. I haven't heard yet. I don't know if it's just a basic restructure, just a basic conversion, which I think creates like 5.3 and change cap space. Maybe they talked to him and got some void years added to make it even more savings, but I can't imagine them just doing a whole new extension. So it's got to be either a basic restructure or restructure with void years tacked on. Let's see what else we got here. We're over at 3,100 viewers here, so we're going to keep resetting that record. So I appreciate all the support, man. Means a lot to me. Let's see here. Is there a chance we go after safety? I wish they'd go after a safety in free agency. I mean, I like Jimmy Ward. I feel like you're going against the grain with just relying on him and Petrie, especially with the injuries that we saw Ward go through last year. And then I think he's 32, something like that. So to me, you've got to get another safety. And there's plenty of free agents out there still. It sucks that they are missing a few. But Jimmy Ward's 33. The team's got to get a wide receiver 3. And I don't want to get stuck in this game like we saw last year where you're having to sign Kareem Jackson and Adrian Amos in the back half of the season and DeAndre Carson Houston just to fill out your safeties. You've got to expect Jalen Petrie to step up. Get over the sophomore slump that he saw last year. We know D'Amico asked a lot of the safeties, with the split cover 2 scheme that he sometimes runs on top of his cover 3 scheme like he normally runs. Ask a lot of his safeties. But they've got to get another one. And I'm not talking just a vet minimum kind of guy. They need to get a decent, a decent safety. Let's see who's out there still left. Let me swap over to the screen share here. Let's see here. So we talked about Justin Simmons. That's one that would be very intriguing to me. He's 31. Eddie Jackson, his play really fell off in Chicago this past year. But probably wouldn't be too expensive. Quandre Diggs, I think, would be fantastic, but it just doesn't seem like Houston has any interest there. Jenkins, I think, signed. Marcus May got released from New Orleans. That'd be another intriguing name. I'm just not sure if he's healthy or not. So, I mean, you can see before you even get down to the vet minimum type guys, there's still some quality players out there. You could even go back and reach he's 34, but Tayshaun Gibson played the last 2 years in San Francisco, and D'Amico's got to be very familiar with him. So, and then you pair him back up with Jimmy Ward and Jalen Petrie. I think that would be, he was on $2.9 million per year deal, so he wouldn't be very expensive either. So to me, there's options out there on that front. Let's see here. Let me get this off here. All right, so we'll go through some more questions here. Keep throwing them up. We'll see here. It's we're going close to an hour, but man, hey, let's get it going. I got plenty of Coke Zero with me. How you feel about the Will and Hunter pairing? I think it's fantastic. I really do. I love John Gennard. I love what he did. Just it sounded like they were pretty far apart on valuations. I know there was no formal contract offered to John Gennard, but there was some discussions, and I think that they just weren't close on the number. So, you sub him out, bring in Danielle Hunter. He's 29, but he just still has a lot of juice left, and he can really mentor Will Anderson. And I think that's just going to be between Nico Autry, Hunter, and Anderson. I think that's just going to be a fantastic trio. I'm super excited to see that. It's going to be it's going to be one of the top tier edge groups in the league. How do you feel good about this? I haven't looked at the draft stuff quite as hard just yet, just because it's been crazy free agency this week. But it doesn't sound like it's a good one. Doesn't sound like it's a good one, so we'll have to wait and see. Are you Nick Caserio? I keep seeing this on Twitter. Obviously, I'm not. And I certainly don't have AI or deep fakes going or anything like that. So, no, I am not Nick Caserio. That's a fun game to play. So, fun story. When my first Texans training camp, I think was 2018. This is when Rick Smith and Chris Olsen were still with the team, and the media folks that I didn't know at the time, before I met a lot of them, there was only a few people that I knew. They were all wondering who the heck I was, and so Omar, who's director of the PR now, at the time he was the assistant to Amy Palcic, and introduced myself to Omar and was chatting with him, and he said, "Hey, folks here thought maybe you were Chris Olsen because I had the beard and everything." And Omar obviously knows that, but he was like, people wondered if you were Chris Olsen and that you were sneaking around in the media area. So that's lesson one. And then 2 years later, obviously I have a lack of hair, but I didn't have it shaved as closely as Jack Easterby, but there was a few people that were thinking I was Jack Easterby. So I've been different people over the years with within the team. So how likely is the team? Seems very unlikely, Lewis. Very unlikely. I mean, he's going to go, what, top 4, top 5, even if 3 quarterbacks go off the board. So, Gridiron says, do you think they'll trade for DT and sign a safety? I would like to think so, and I think they probably will. Probably just going to wait it out. Might even wait till after the draft. Trade for DT, right now, it doesn't sound like it, but like I was saying earlier, Nick's a wild card. When the Texans have the right, to restructure contract at their discretion, is that something Nick has employed recently? No, that's been around forever. Rick Smith and Chris Olsen did that. That's just been a usual thing in Houston Texans contracts, and it's pretty common across the league. There'll be a paragraph in the contract that's, part, I think it's like 28, something like that in their contracts. It'll say automatic conversion. And it'll say the team will have the right to convert any amount of base salary, paragraph 5 salary, to a signing bonus at the team's will. And basically the player would just sign an addendum, a one piece of paper that says, hey, we're doing this, letting you know, sign it. All it is an accounting function. The player doesn't receive money up front, doesn't receive money early, doesn't really have a choice. So you see so-and-so player restructured their contract. Unless it's a whole new contract with void years, different pay parameters, things like that, then yeah, you can give credit to the player. But if it's just an automatic basic conversion, there's no change in money. It's just an salary cap accounting difference. And so the player still earns his money bi-weekly, 36 weeks throughout the season, just as he would before. So that's how that kind of works. So, but yeah, Texans have had it around for a long time. They put it in pretty much every contract. There's only a few teams left that don't even use them. New England wasn't using them for years. I'm not sure if Elliott Wolf and that new crew up there is going to use them, but for years, Bill Belichick and them did not use them. Fun little story on automatic conversion. Washington did something pretty clever a couple years ago. They did it on like 3 contracts that we had found. They put in the automatic conversion in that language, not only the right to convert the salary to bonus, but have the right to add up to 2 void years as part of the automatic conversion. Because normally when you add void years to a contract, it's a whole new contract. The player has to agree to it, whole new contract, sign, everything, all that. They built in the ability to not only convert the money, but add void years to it on top of it, just to spread out the salary cap charges for a little bit. So that was pretty cool. Let's see here. Luca, are we cutting Robert Woods? I mean, they haven't. I don't see it. What would be the point of doing it now? You're just creating another hole that you have to backfill, and there's really not many options out there to backfill it. Cutting a player just to cut a player just doesn't make sense, in my opinion. You've got to factor in the replacement cost. You've got to factor in the replacement value. You got to factor in that you're bringing in a new player when you have a player that's familiar with this system. Robert Woods, I know he wasn't the impact player that you would like to have been, but you got to factor all that stuff in. You see it all the time on social media. Just cut the players, $4.5 million in savings. Yeah, but then you got to pay $3.5 million to replace him for a guy that's probably not any better than Robert Woods. So why do it? What's the point? So I think if they were going to cut him, it would have already been done because they had somebody coming in to replace him. That would kind of be my thing at this point. The only reason that he would get released is maybe something came up in the draft and they were able to get maybe 2 wide receivers that they really liked. But I feel like at this point, Robert Woods is here to stay. I could be completely wrong, but here to stay all the way through camp, and then maybe he's a trade candidate or a cap casualty at the end of training camp. Joey says, stop using super chats for your questions. I don't mind it. Let's see here. Larry says, when players are traded, are there a roster and option bonuses traded to the new team? Yes. Option bonuses are a little tricky from a cap standpoint because the current year one will stay with the current team and there's a credit, blah, blah, blah. But for the most part, anything that hasn't occurred yet, so if there's an option bonus this summer, next year, roster bonus next year, the new team takes all that in. What about, I saw this earlier today, and it makes no sense to me. Dexter Lawrence from New York, why would New York even entertain trading it? I don't understand that. I mean, he's got, because they gave him a pretty big signing bonus. Let's see here. No, not that one. This one. I mean, even look at it's still $18 million in dead money for them, and they're not hurting on cash outlay. So to me, that doesn't make any sense. You just signed him and spent $24 million on him last year. Why sign him to this big deal just to turn around and trade him? That doesn't come together for me. So, Tim, I would say that would probably be not something I would think would happen. What do you think about all the fan discourse this offseason? Man, it was fun. It was a lot of fun. A lot of talk. A lot of good discussions between, on X. I still call it Twitter. I'm old. A lot of good discussions on there. A lot of discussions on the Discord servers that are out there. I'm on one or two of them, but a lot of good discussions across. And it seems like it was pretty cordial this year. A lot of not only cordial, but intelligent, not fantasy football type stuff. I mean, you're always going to have a little bit of that. Sign Eric Armstead and Danielle Hunter and Xavier McKinney and Mike Evans. That's a little unrealistic. But, I mean, for the most part, it was a pretty good offseason for the fans. And I had a lot of good discussions with folks. And I do enjoy chatting with people on X or whatever. If you want to go to my Substack, capandtrade.football, there's a chat function on there. Send me a message on that. I get a notification. I try to reply pretty quickly. I can't reply to everybody on X, partly just because of the way I have my notifications set up. But I try to reply to as many people as I can. And, as long as you're not making dumb or stupid comments at me or saying something, inappropriate, then, we can have a cordial discussion. So overall, I think it was pretty good. No complaints. Truth, man. I hadn't seen you. There you are. All right. Contract prediction for Justin Simmons. Oh, let's see here. I think this is just going to have to be a 1-year prove-it deal. I mean, he was a cap casualty. I don't know that he was really a performance casualty in Denver. But I really think 1, maybe 2-year deal at most. But I think and it's going to be some pretty incentive-laden kind of deal. So I think you probably look at the probably $8 to $10 million per year. Well, Geno Stone got 7, but he's an undrafted guy. Malik Hooker 7. Darnell Savage was at 7.25 with Jacksonville. So maybe in that area, 7 to 8 million. Then put on some pretty heavy incentives tied to honors, Pro Bowl, All Pro. I think you can do playtime. He can do playtime obviously as well. Interceptions I think is another one that's acceptable. Make it. We'll call it 7.5 up to 10 with incentives, something like that. That's how I kind of would think. There'll be Houston probably would only do a 1-year, maybe a 2-year deal at most. Some teams maybe want to go a little bit further with it. Looks like we got another super chat. So let me hop over here. Oh, hey, I appreciate it, Charles. Didn't know if there was a question or not, but I appreciate the support, man. It's very, very kind of you. Really appreciate it, man. Let's see. Let's go back over to Q for questions. Keep going with these. Let me see where we were at. All right. Marco, why trade the first in Collins? Yeah, we talked about the Collins. We talked about the trade. I just kind of refer back to my valuation discussion on the trade today that we saw, and how the team potentially views the player valuations at pick 23 versus 42, and playing on variance with that 2025 pick. And I think the team can really just find some good value with these extra second round picks, and doesn't preclude them from moving back up either. So, what are the odds of packaging pick 42 for Diggs? I just don't know that Diggs is the guy you want in this locker room. It's rude of me to say, but personally, I'm not interested at all. Like we talked about, he's like 18, so I mean, it wouldn't be too expensive. You just have to do a little cap manipulation, and then once you get him over here, then you'd have to rework his deal. But I'm not a big fan of that. But pick 42 to me seems a bit much for a 31-year-old wide receiver. It had to be, from my eyes, it had to be like fourth rounder or something like that. Do you have a prediction of what Renfrow should make in free agency? It's not going to be very much. Man, when you get cut from a team, it really pulls your value down. I can't imagine him being more than $4 or $5 million at most. I mean, Noah Brown signed for $5 million this year, so it's going to be something like that. It wouldn't be very much at all. When is wave 3 or 4? Beige wants to know. We're in wave 3 or 4. Wave 1 is the first 2 days of the legal tampering period. And then wave 2 is the back end of the legal tampering period. We're in wave 3 already. It moves quickly, man. Oh, I know, Joey. Don't worry about it, bud. Who do you think Simpson go? Yeah, we talked about Simmons. Foley and Settle are a downgrade from. Well, yeah, downgrade from Collins and Rankins. Yeah, they are a downgrade. We talked about that earlier. That's a tough change of events at the defensive tackle spot. So you're not going to hit everything. Sometimes your perfect plan can go to crap real quick, and it looks like it went to crap real quick. Contract. See, this is a good one. Contract prediction for Derek Barnett. I don't know what's going on with him. I don't know why. I don't know if the team has any interest in him. I would say probably in the. So AJ Epinesa went for 6. Tyquan Lewis up in Indy went for 6. That's kind of where I'm thinking. Probably 6, 5.5, 5 to 7 million, somewhere in there. That would be my thought on Derek Barnett. Scott Davis, how did you get started in this? I assume you're talking about salary cap stuff. Oh, well, we can do a quick story since we're over 4,100 viewers. Appreciate the support, folks. Yeah, I think it was started like the rest of y'all folks on the message boards, the wonderful Houston, Texas message boards that were moderated to death. Those moderators had a tough job. And there's people were talking about, I think it was trying to trade Matt Schaub in like 2010, 2011. Or it was right after he signed the contract before the Miami game. And I think when he got hurt and then people were wanting to trade him. And there was a lot of folks talking about salary cap. And nobody really had a real accurate answer. And so I figured, hey, what's going on with this? I like numbers. I'm good with numbers. Got a hold of the CBA, read it, slightly understood it, then started asking questions. And luckily I met a lot of good people online. There's probably about a dozen of people that track salary caps for different teams. Miguel at Pat's Cap, Jason Fitzgerald, who owns overthecap.com, big Jets fan. He started doing the Jets. Brian McFarland for the Ravens. Ian Whetstone for the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's Jason for the San Francisco 49ers. Sean Gorman for the Vikings. I mean, there's just a lot of folks to do this. And Ian, Brian, and Miguel and Jason, we've had a group DM on Twitter for 9 years now, and they're just indispensable, and just ask a lot of questions. And then I'm fortunate enough to be able to forge a lot of good relationships within the media with different folks who have access to information, and just kind of build on it. And that's kind of how it started. And I've been doing this now. What's 2024? So 13 years. Been doing this. Whew, time flies. What are the expectations on Jeff Okudah? Man, I got to temper my expectations on him. Houston has a rash of soft tissue injury history, and hopefully that doesn't follow him over here. But, he's got the skills. He's a 3rd overall pick. I think if you could just get like Steven Nelson plus performance, I think that would be a huge win. If you could get 12 games out of him, I think that'd be a huge win. Putting the onus on him with a 1-year deal, he's going to have to really play hard to, because first, draft pedigree follows players when it comes to contracts. So if Jeff Okudah could have a good, solid year, stay relatively healthy, have a few interceptions, not get burned quite a bit, and just have a good, solid year, then he'll make a lot of money and be back on the open market next year and probably sign somewhere else. So I think he has a lot of incentive to play really well and try to stay healthy. And I think if you could just, like I said, Steven Nelson type-ish play, I think that would be pretty nice. And speaking of which, is it safe to say Steven Nelson is dead? I don't think he's coming back. I think that ship has sailed. Maybe he'll find a place somewhere else. I appreciate it, Paige. You're welcome. Potential contract for Tart. This one I was surprised. I think he visited Cincinnati. He shouldn't be very expensive. Shouldn't be very expensive at all. Let's see. Let me reset this here. He can't. Like $4 or $5 million at most. He was playing on the PPE this past year, the RFA. Yeah, $3 or $4 million. It wouldn't be very expensive at all. If they didn't bring him back already, it kind of leads me to believe that they're just not interested. So that would kind of be my take on it. So I think that's the end of the questions. We hit a lot of talking points tonight, man. Been a fun free agency, just to kind of summarize it. Overall, I'm pleased with what Houston has done. I definitely don't like how the defensive tackle situation played out. Hopefully they can figure something out with there. A little bit scared to be going into the season with the rotation of guys that they have. Puts a lot of stress on the secondary, the middle of the secondary, and the linebacker core. But if anybody can figure it out and scheme it out, it's going to be D'Amico. And, we'll have to wait and see what happens. But, for the most part, I like the linebacker signing. I love the Daniil Hunter signing. I still would like to see him bring in a safety, try to find another defensive tackle as they get heading towards the draft. not surprised to see a quiet on the offensive side of the ball. Joe Mixon was the big addition over there, but I think that group is pretty well set up, and they've allocated a lot of resources to that side of the ball. And so overall, I think, did the team get better? Probably so. So I think they probably did get a little bit better. Still got some holes. Probably just the holes probably shifted around, right? So hopefully team can stay healthy, and then the draft coming up. So it's time to flip, more or less flip the page on free agency and start moving towards the draft. So I'll try to get back to writing once I think we're, got the majority of the stuff on Over the Cap updated. I know Jason was working on some stuff tonight. But make sure you subscribe to the newsletter. Like I said, it's free. Usually I'm pumping out a letter once a week. This time of the year, it covers the league. Probably do some stuff on some of my favorite contracts that we saw during this free agency, and probably some of the worst ones, like the Gabe Davis one in Jacksonville and Calvin Ridley. I think those are both just really, really bad contracts, bad evaluations. But I want to probably take a look at some of what I think were really good value, what are some interesting structures, things like that, as we head towards the draft. So make sure you subscribe. It's really fun. I really appreciate it. And then with that, we got one more question before we close it down, because I know Landry's starting up here in a minute. Yeah, we'll try to get out of here so y'all can hop over to tell Landry I said kill him. That's fine. Possibilities on Justin Simmons. I haven't heard anything, Kivo. I haven't heard anything to indicate that they have any interest in that, but the fact that I haven't heard anything makes me feel like it's probably not on the radar for them, but you never know. Nick's a wild card, man. Nick is a wild card. So I appreciate it. We had 4,300 viewers going right now. We'll try to do this again. I don't know exactly when, but we'll do this again as soon as we can, just when life lets me. It's tough to do them sometimes, but I do appreciate all the support. I appreciate all the comments. Make sure you follow me on X at TexansCap if you're not already there. And this was fun. A lot of fun. So I think we'll go ahead and call it a night. I think that will be about it. So subscribe to the newsletter, capandtrade.football, at TexansCap on Twitter, X, Cap and Trade on Instagram and Threads, whatever the heck it's called. I post occasionally over there, but Twitter and the chat on capandtrade.football, the best two places to reach me. Or you can email me, troy@overthecap.com. Love chatting with people. If you've got any questions, comments, send me a message on one of those 3 different ways. If there's something that you want to cover tonight and I didn't cover it, and you just want to ask a question, send it over. So I appreciate it. Everybody have a good night. Peace. With that, we will shut it down. Have a good evening.